So for section 2 today, we're going to talk about circles, and we're going to go over like how to write the equation of a circle, how to find the center and the radius of a circle. So a circle is a set of all points in a plane that are the same distance away from a fixed point, and that fixed point is called the center. And so when you have like the center of your circle established and you go out a specific distance, that's your radius from the center to the edge of the circle. And then all of the points that are kind of around that same distance away from the center would make up the circle. When you're looking at the equation of a circle with a center HK, so that would be the coordinate that they're going to use, but they're going to talk about it as H and as a K instead of like X and Y. And then your radius R, this is the equation that we're going to use. We're going to do X minus the H, and then that gets squared, plus Y minus the K, and that gets squared, equals your radius squared. So the reason why we don't use X and Y to talk about the center is because X and Y is already in my equation, and those are talking about like other points that will be on the circle. Just like when we had like a regular line that was in slope-intercept form, we had like y equals mx plus b. We always left the y and the x kind of blank. We would just fill in the slope and the y-intercept because x and y are changing depending on where you're at on the line. So the same thing happens when you're talking about circles. So I'm going to show you guys how you write an equation of a circle if you know what the origin is and if you know what the radius is. So number 1 says that we're centered at the origins. Remember, origin would be 0, 0. And a radius is 6. So this 0, 0, this is your H and this is your K. And then 6 would be the R. So then going up to my equation here, I'm going to do X minus the H, which is 0. And that quantity gets squared. And then plus, it's y minus k, so y minus 0 squared. And then your radius squared is 6 squared. Now when you have something centered at the origin like this, and you're doing x minus 0, y minus 0, it's not really going to change your x or your y. So we're going to go ahead and just rewrite this so it just says x squared plus y squared equals 6 squared is 36. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify that as well. So this would be the equation of that circle. Okay, you guys try number 2. So again, this one has the center at the origin, which means 0, 0. Your radius this time is that square root of 7. So 0, 0 is your H and your K. So just like that last problem, we're going to do x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared. And then I'm going to take that square root of 7 and square it, because that's my r squared. So we're going to have x squared plus y squared, because again, when you subtract 0, it doesn't do anything. And then just like we were talking about from yesterday when we were dealing with the square roots underneath like the distance formula, when you square something that's underneath the square root sign, those things cancel each other off, and so this is just going to equal 7. So now let's take a look at an example where the center is not at the origin anymore. So they're giving me a coordinate for this one, 5, 0. So 5 is my h, 0 is my k, and the radius is 6. So we're going to do x minus 5 squared, and then plus, it's going to be y minus 0 squared. So I'm just putting in h and k, and then r squared would be 6 squared. Now the y is doing the same thing that it's done on the last two problems where we're subtracting 0, so that's just going to stay y squared. For the x minus 5, there's not really anything we can do with that as far as simplifying, so we're going to just leave that as x minus 5 squared, and then you're going to have plus y squared, and then 6 squared is 36. So this is going to be our final equation here. So you guys try number 4. Be careful with that -6 because it's going to change something inside of your parentheses. Okay, so here's what it looks like when you plug it in. Now with the x minus 3 squared, that's going to stay as is. But with the y, because it says minus -6, we do want to change that. I don't want to see double signs like that, so change it to a plus sign. So it's going to say y plus 6 squared equals 1, because 1 squared is just 1. So anytime you have a negative number in for your center, it's going to change that sign in the parenthesis to a plus sign, because you're always going to have minus a negative. All right, the last couple on this front page here are just a little bit different because they do give us the center still, but they're not giving us the radius right away. So what we're going to have to do is actually find the radius first, and we do that by using the distance formula that we saw yesterday in section 1. So for this, what we need to do is figure out how far apart the center is and the point on the circle, because the point on the circle would be on the edge of the circle. So remember I said the distance from the center to the edge is your radius. So we just need to figure out how long that is. So I'm going to start by labeling these x1, y1, x2, y2 so that I can use my distance equation. So I'm going to do 4 minus 2 squared plus 7 minus 3 squared. So 4 minus 2 is going to be 2, so underneath here I have a 2 squared, and then 7 minus 3 is 4, so 4 squared. So then I have 4 plus 16, which is going to be the square root of 20. Now I am not going to worry about breaking that square root down. I'm just going to leave it right there, because now this is my radius. Okay, so to write my equation, I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to grab my center, which is at 2, 3. And I'm going to grab this radius now, which is the square root of 20. I'm going to plug these in to my circle equation. So I'm going to do x minus 2, and that's squared. And then plus y minus 3, and that's squared. And that equals my radius, which is the square root of 20. And I'm going to square that too. So for my answer here, I can't simplify the x minus 2 or the y minus 3, so we're going to just leave those as is, like we've seen on some of those problems up above. So it says x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared. What happens with the radius squared? What does it equal? 20. Okay, it's that same situation where you're squaring a square root, so they cancel each other off, and the 20 comes out. And that's why I didn't worry about simplifying it when I found it, because if I had done that, you're still going to get 20, but it's going to look a little different, because if you break it down and you simplify, you're going to have to square both of those pieces. So I would just leave it like that, because then it just pops out in your equation when you square it. So you guys try number 6. Find the distance between the center and the point on the circle first, so find your radius, and then plug in your information to your equation. Okay, so when I found the radius, it came out to be the square root of 25, which is 5. Now you have options there. You can either leave it as the square root of 25, or you can write it as 5. Eventually we're going to get back to just 25, because I'm going to put in 5 squared, or if I squared the square root of 25, both ways you're going to get that 25 to come out. Now with this one, when I put in that center, both of them have the double negatives. So when I write my final answer here, it should have said x plus 2 squared, and then plus y plus 3 squared equals 25. All right, so let's turn the page. We're going to switch gears just a little bit. Instead of us writing the equation out, they're going to give us the equation. And what we need to do is pull the center and pull the radius and then graph these circles. So to do the center and the radius, you just look at your equation and you pull the numbers that you see. And remember, when we were putting them in, it always said x minus a number. So if you see that the sign has changed to a plus sign in the equation, then that means that the number that you put in was negative. So you almost have to kind of think about pulling the opposite sign that you see inside the parentheses. Now in this first one, it just says x squared. So what was the number that we put in on some of those examples on the previous page when we wrote just x squared? 0. Okay, so for my center here, for the h, that's 0. And then k comes from the y portion. So it says y minus 3. So again, it looks like negative 3, but you always pull the opposite sign. So you're going to pull positive 3 out. So the center is 0, 3. Now to find the radius, you want to take the number on the end and square root it. So the number on the end is 49. So we're going to square root 49, which is 7. Now we need to graph. All right, so what I do when I'm graphing circles is I start at the center, so 0, 3, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. And then my radius is 7, so that means that from the center all the way to the edge is always 7. 7 like of these squares on my graph. Now in this case, I don't want to like go diagonally because I can't count perfectly diagonally, but I can count up, down, left, and right. So that's what I do. I'll go up 7, down 7, left 7, and right 7, and just like make like a little mark of where it is to kind of give me an idea of where the circle should be. Okay. So you can kind of see on mine up here, I've just got like those dashes. And then at this point, this is when you want to draw in your circle. Now, I do not expect them to be perfect. Okay, drawing circles can be kind of hard, especially if you've never done it before. So if it's a little, like wonky or it looks a little weird in some areas, that's fine. As long as you've got your center and your radius in the right area, I'm not going to be too picky about the look of your circle. Okay, they don't have to be pretty. And I haven't graphed a circle in a while, so mine's probably not going to look all that great. Okay, but that's what I'm looking for. Something like that on your graph. Okay, so you guys try number 2. Pull your center, pull your radius. You might get a decimal for your radius, so you'll have to kind of estimate where you think that's at. So for my center here, I'm pulling the opposite from what I see. So -2, +7. That comes from the x and from the y. Now radius is at 15, and we have to square root 15. 15 is not a perfect square. Okay, it's not going to come out nice as a whole number. You're going to get a decimal. So I would round it, so it's approximately 3.9. So almost 4. So for this one, I'm going to start at that center, -2, 7. And then I'm going to go up, down, left, right, almost 4. I'm going to go just barely above the 4 for that 3.9. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and just above 4. And I'm going to do the same thing going left, right, and up. Okay, and then draw that circle in around those points. Now if we look at number 3 looks a little bit different than 1 and 2 did because it's like divided by 7. Both of the x and the y pieces are. So what I would do to help us out on this problem is get rid of those 7s first. Like get rid of the fraction by multiplying everything by a 7. So when I do that for the x minus 5 and the y plus 2 quantities, those 7s are now going to be gone because they're like in the denominator right now, and I'm multiplying them by a 7 in the numerator. So they're going to cancel. So I have x minus 5 squared, and then y plus 2 squared, because the same thing's going to happen on that one too. But then I also have to take that 1 times 7, so it's going to equal 7 now. Can anyone tell me what the center is going to be for this graph? Good. 5 and negative 2. What's the radius going to be? What are we going to square root? What number? 7. So again, we're not going to get a perfect number here. If I square root this and I round, I get about 2.6. All right, so I'm going to erase that so I have some space to do this one. So center is at 5, negative 2, and then we're going 2.6 in all directions. And then I'm just going to draw that circle in. All right, the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about on the last page, we're kind of going back to writing out equations. So that we can say like what the center and the radius is, but these are not written in kind of what we saw earlier. So we have what's called like the general form of a circle here. And so the general form is, I think you guys have it on the top of mine. I don't think I have it in here for some reason. So the general form looks like this, where you have x squared plus y squared plus dx plus e y plus f equals 0. So what we can do is we can take something that's in this form and rewrite it so that it's in that form that we were dealing with at the start of this section, so we can pull the center and pull the radius. To do this, we have to use the process completing the square, which we talked about completing the square back when we were dealing with like quadratics. So that was back in chapter 2. So it's been a while since we've done completing the square. But we talked about that when we were trying to like factor something. So we were trying to create a perfect trinomial so that we could then use our square root property to help us solve an equation. So we're going to do that for circles here. The first thing that you're going to want to do is take the equation that they give you, kind of rearrange it a little bit. So put like your x's together and put your y's together. So I see x squared and negative 4x. So I'm going to write those together. And then right next to the 4x, the negative 4x, I'm going to do plus, and I'm going to draw my first blank. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my y's. So right after that, I'm going to put my y squared and my 6y together. And I'm going to draw in a second blank. Now the blanks represent what we're going to be putting in as far as when we complete the square here. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to move it over to the other side. So I'm going to add it over to the 0. So it becomes positive 3. And then after that, I need to put in 2 blanks, because whatever I add to the left-hand side when I complete my square, I have to add to the other side too, because I have to keep this equation balanced. So whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other side. That's basic algebra. So to complete the square, if you don't remember, to like figure out what number goes in the middle there, this is when you guys do your half of your b term, which is that term in the middle. So for x, it's going to be negative 4. So half of negative 4 is negative 2, and then you square that. So you take negative 2 squared, and you get positive 4. So that's the number that's going to go up in here into the blank right next to the negative 4x, and I'm also going to put it over in the blank on the other side of the equal sign next to the 3. I'm going to do the same thing then for the y. So the middle term for the y's is that 6y. So 6. So I'm going to do half of 6, which is 3. And then we're going to do 3 squared, which is 9. And 9 is going to go up in the blanks as well. So then what we can do is we can rewrite this quantity and this one. And then we'll end up adding these numbers together. So kind of the things that I'm boxing up, we're going to rewrite them individually. So what I mean is I'm going to rewrite this so that it's something squared. Because that's what the whole completing the square process did for us. So in this first one, you're going to have an x. And in the second one, you're going to have a y. To figure out what number goes in there, you look at like your process that you did to fill in that blank. So when we did the half of b, so I did half of -4, half of 6. That number that I got there, that's the number that goes down when I'm trying to like write this as a binomial. So it's going to be x minus 2 and y plus 3. The reason why it's those numbers is because if I take -2 times -2, I get that positive 4. And if I add -2 and -2, I get -4. So it's that factoring process. Now 3 plus 4 plus 9, that's going to be 16. Okay, so now this looks like a regular equation of a circle that we dealt with at the start of class. So I should be able to pull my center and my radius now. So for this one, the center is going to be positive 2, negative 3, and the radius is going to be 4, because you take the square root of 16. Let's do one more of these together here. So I start by rewriting this. So x squared minus 2y, and then draw in your first blank. Now do your y's. So y squared, whoops, I wrote the wrong thing down. Should be x squared plus 8x. Then y squared minus y, draw in your second blank. Let's move that 5 over. So it's going to become -5 because I'm going to have to subtract it from 0. So it equals -5 and then plus, draw in your 2 blanks here. All right, so let's do our completing the square. So for the first one, I'm going to do half of 8, which is 4. And then you square that number, so that's 16. So what would I do half of on the y? What number do I pull? Good, -2. And half of -2 is going to be -1. And then we're going to square -1, which is just positive 1. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my pieces again. So I'm just going to kind of box those up so you guys can kind of see what exactly I'm rewriting these for. So this first one is x, and since 4 is what I got when I did my half of b, it's going to be x plus 4 because it's positive squared.
May I have Kylie Westhoff with her things, please?
Yep. How about the y? Y, not -2, but -1 squared. Okay, and then -5 plus 16 plus 1 would be 12. So what's the center for this circle? Good, -4, positive 1. Now radius would be the square root of 12. Are there any perfect squares that can go into 12? 4 and 3. So let's rewrite this as like underneath the square root, it'd be 4 times 3. So that's going to simplify to 2 square root of 3. So that's your radius. And this is your center. Now there is one more here. If you want to give this one a try on your own, you can. I'm just going to write down what the center and what the radius comes out to be, so that if you want to give it a shot for extra practice, you can whenever you have a free moment.